Welcome to First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast. I'm your host, James Gardner, certified athletic therapist, certified strength and conditioning specialist, yoga instructor, human being. This platform, for the pros, by the pros, anybody in the performance space, and beyond. Welcome here to share in the stories of professionals, experiences, journeys, learning along the way. It's a platform to connect, to network, and to be a part of a community that cares, with conversations that matter, experiences that resonate, and generate ideas, thought-provoking, organic dialogue, passionate pros. Brought to you as always by First Star Therapy, Mobility Tape, Epic, and Benchmark Athletics, in association with the Canadian Athletic Therapists Association. It's First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast. Thanks for being here. Thank you for being a part of it. All right, here we go. First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast. We are at session 99, pushing up against 100, and we have, as always, an extremely special guest this evening. It's Michael Robinson. Get to his bio in a second. As always, this podcast is meant to reach many through stories, through sharing visions, philosophies, experiences, and getting to know the people in this profession and in the performance space. And you know, sharing is caring, the old cliche, but getting to know one another, getting to know our colleagues through this, and passing along knowledge through experience and through the things that light us up and through the things that we all experience at various points in our career. So as always, brought to you by First Star Therapy, Mobility Tape, Epic, Benchmark Athletics, and in association with the Canadian Athletic Therapists Association. Session 99. Michael Robinson is a certified athletic therapist and has been practicing since 2013. He holds a Bachelor of Applied Science in Athletic Therapy, a Master of Science in Athletic Training, and a PhD in Measurement and Methods, with a research interest in the psychometric evaluation of clinical assessment tools for concussions. Mike is currently the Vice President of the Canadian Athletic Therapists Association and is the current past president. So he was president, he's moved into the vice president's role. We can talk about that. We'll talk about a lot with Mike, lots of experience here in a lot of different realms. He's authored a number of peer-reviewed publications on the topics of concussion symptom assessment, psychometrics, and clinical concussion assessment. In addition, Mike has been a speaker for the College of Family Physicians of Canada at their annual Family Medicine Forum, for the Canadian Athletic Therapists Association, and the Canadian Sport Massage Therapists Association. Clinically, Mike has been a member of the FC London League One staff for the past 5 years, Fanshawe Falcons women's soccer staff for the past 3 years, and has been the medical lead for the Ontario Volleyball Championships, World Junior Ultimate Frisbee Championship, and the Run for the Toad Ultra Marathon. Academically, Mike is an assistant professor in the Faculty of Health Science and a postdoctoral fellow with the Fowler Kennedy Sports Medicine Clinic. Needless to say, plenty has been done, plenty is being done. And Mike, always a pleasure, man, to get you on here, have your voice and see your face through this medium. Really appreciate you carving in the time. I'll let you say hello and we'll go where we go this evening.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, James.
Yeah, always a pleasure, and so much in that bio in terms of where your interests lie, the things you've accomplished to date, and the things, excuse me, that you're currently involved in. So generally speaking, we start with this buildup of where did it start and how did you get to where you got to, but we're going to throw a little curveball at it this evening and start with where you're at right now, because you are doing some amazing work, obviously at Western University and in the Fowler Kennedy space and all of the things that you're currently involved in. So whatever element you want to start with, let's start with where you're at right now.
So right now, I currently work as an assistant professor at Western, but the cool part of my job is I get to work out of the Fowler Kennedy Sports Medicine Clinic, and I lead their concussion research program. So pretty much everyone on this call, no matter where you are from, has heard of us at some point, because we invented the Hawkins-Kennedy test. Our founders did years and years ago. I work on some pretty cool research programs. my area of expertise is actually a little, I would say, boring for most. I am a statistician that does applied data modeling and other analysis to try to make the tools we use better. And that's really the big key, that I have no interest in doing any research and anything that doesn't have a positive impact on the clinical process, because I'm not going to waste my time. And I think having that impact is really important piece of it. Really cool that I get to interact with tons of undergraduate students at Western, but really that it's that research piece that I truly love. And we're doing things like we've got working on a clinical trial for a blood test for concussion. We're doing some novel interventions. We're collaborating with a group called Connect. So it's about 14 sites across Canada, or sorry, across Ontario, that we're all collecting clinical data on concussion and housing it in this. It's a government supported database out of Queen's University, which is really cool because now we can collaborate and solve big picture problems with big data. But yeah, it's sort of where I'm at right now. And I still work as an AT. I have the great opportunity to work with one of my mentors, Surinder Budwal, who's the actual co-lead for most of those things. I'm the lackey on the sideline with him, but we do big events. This is actually my second month not being employed in semi-pro soccer, so I've stepped away from that to take some time. I still get to work with Fanshawe women's soccer, where we're a 3-time Ontario provincial champion, 1-time bronze medal champion. It's just a fun environment to be in right now.
Yeah, man, you capture so many things that I just want to jump on before we get too far down the line. Nice little review of Hawkins Kennedy. So for anybody who's out there listening, just pique your interest. That's where it was created. That's where it started. And then going into, okay, that's a rotator cuff test. That's an impingement test. What does that look like? What does that feel like? I think those are always great reviews when somebody says the name of a test, because that's the part that's sometimes difficult to remember, is the name of the test and what is testing. It's a nice little review there. But as far as statistics go and research, I think in our space as athletic therapists, I think that foundational knowledge of what is an athletic therapist, we all have sort of biased views of what that is. Is that the sideline therapist who's walking up and down waiting for somebody to get hurt and running out on the field? Or is it the person who's in the clinic doing the rehab behind the scenes and nobody actually knows what they do or sees them ever? Is it somebody who is advising orthopedic surgeons or statisticians on how to apply things? And there's so much availability in terms of where we fit. You captured a lot of it. And I think the foundational piece of athletic therapy that we get through school, and as we go and as we gain experience, we start to find our niche and find our way. And it doesn't need to happen day one out of school, but it certainly begins to mold in school. And then it's probably changed 100 times for you based on all the things that you've
100%.
done. Yeah. And that applied piece is massive, especially where I'm at now, or where I've been through my career. Is collecting data is really, really easy. It's super sexy. Everybody's doing it. They're trying to generate all this data. And a lot of the times we're just fishing and we're just throwing this tiny little, minnow or lure into the water, hoping the big fish comes. Whereas here you have some data and it's applicable to the clinic. You are in the process of making things applicable for clinicians, for practitioners. That's obviously an important piece of why you do what you do. Had you noticed gaps? Is that what led you to that place?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what led me down this road was actually when I graduated from Sheridan. I was lucky enough that I got to do a professional master's in athletic training at Ohio University. So I got to work with Dr. Chad Starkey, who some of you may have his books. But the question I sort of had was actually, we learned about baseline testing, and I started thinking about it. Like, if you think about all the symptoms on the SCAT-5, they're all symptoms that overlap other normal things. So I sort of went, maybe this isn't the best thing we should be doing. And my very first paper actually was about that, was how unreliable singular baseline testing really is. Because take me, like, I suffer from migraines due to the weather. Last week was not fun. So didn't mean I was concussed. I had probably 12 out of the 22 symptoms. Doesn't mean I had a concussion. So that's where I started going down that road, because I really started questioning, what are we doing and why are we doing this?
Yeah, and those are massive questions, and we can look at sort of modern medicine, or we can look at COVID, and COVID overlaps all of these other things as well. And we aren't going to go down that road, but essentially we pull back, and we now just assume everything is COVID, right? Any symptom, just hold back as if it were COVID. And even if it is a cold, then at least we're not passing that along. But same thing for you. It's like you're understanding how to navigate this as a clinician, as somebody who's been on the sideline, and now you're advising within your research, which I think is absolutely amazing, because you've been on both sides, and you can be that implementable factor, right? Like that piece is that generally speaking, we as a collective of Western medicine don't do a good job. We're great at creating apps, we're great at capturing data, but the real life stuff of making it applicable is extremely difficult. It's not to say that like we're terrible at doing it. It's just, it's really difficult to do. Like, what are we doing when we capture that data? So I think that piece is massive. And so to take it one step further, like as you're going through school, did you have an interest in statistics and research, or did you kind of just fall upon this? Like where did this sort of get sparked?
So because I had this idea, like this, I guess, need to understand why we do any things, because I find too often we do things because we think we should do them. And so I had no interest in statistics. I had no interest in math. It was never really anything that I really would, dream about at night. But when I was doing this research in Ohio, I started really to understand that there's a whole field of validating clinical tools, and that's what piqued my interest. And then when I started really understanding more about statistics, and I'm lucky enough that I hold a sessional position teaching it now at Western, that if we harness it correctly, it really can be a tool that we use to predict. But too often not, we see statistics misunderstood. We don't do a good job. As a foundational education across the board in healthcare, we do a terrible job of providing basic tools for clinicians to use. So no, I actually never really loved statistics until halfway through my master's degree. And then when I ended up at Western, they had a very specific PhD in the very specific field of statistics that I liked. And I've been lucky enough now to not only have probably one of the best mentors, Dr. Andrew Johnson, but he's a great friend of mine now too. And he took me under his wing because, again, no one likes statistics. So when someone comes knocking on your door and saying, I really love this, I found out they tend to actually want to work with you.
Yeah, no, and beautiful captures all the way along, and sort of understanding how to interpret statistics. Like, we know that they can be skewed. We know that data can be skewed to be information, misinformation, disinformation. It can be presented in any way. So that piece of understanding how to utilize it to make it applicable for the people in the roles that well goes a long way too, because generally speaking, statisticians, data collectors are not the ones that are pushing this on the sidelines, right? We're just doing certain things because they're doing it, or because we think it's a good idea, or may lead to something. But in this case, you've lived it. You're on the sideline, like you said, semi-pro soccer, collegiate soccer, different levels of sport all the way through. So really interesting pieces. And again, starting from that foundational piece of the athletic therapy program at Sheridan, going and doing a master's in Ohio and seeing it from a little bit of a different lens, and where it might be, where there may be opportunities, right? And so generally speaking, which you're well aware of, as students, when we're going through, we sort of look at, and I bring this up often because a lot of students pick this up, and I was a student, and generally go back to that mindset quite often of like, I have 3 jobs when I get out of here. I can either take my professor's job, I can work in pro sport, or I can open my own clinic. And when we turn those 3 prongs on the side, there's a lot of space in between those. And I think just hearing what you're doing, it didn't happen overnight. You've been at this, nearing, 10 years as a professional, plus your schooling, all those other times that you spent in it. There's a lot more out there. And I think some of the discussions with AT is, well, we need to be better known. We need to be more well understood as to what we do. So we do sideline and we do this, like we do everything. I see this as like this hub role that can sit in a room and have a conversation with, in your case, a statistician, and then interpret that and then make it applicable. Like that's a big piece that I can't do. I can sit in a room and have a conversation with 10 different practitioners and not be lost, which I think is quite applicable to the space that I'm in on this side. And so as an athletic therapist, the breadth of this profession, this is what I'm attempting to share through having these conversations and through grabbing great people like you who are willing to share your story and your passion and what you're doing, because this is a profession that doesn't have to be khakis and a collared shirt on the sideline, right?
Absolutely. And it's I think it's important to realize that we have a huge opportunity to apply that breadth of knowledge, because we have that sort of, that generalist in the sport medicine arena. And it's something that, I really championed when I became president of CATA. The first thing I did was reinstate meetings with sport physio, sport chiro, sport massage, and CASM to get everyone back at the table. And what we quickly found out was we are generalists that everyone does respect. Sport physio has it in their strategic plan to develop better working relationships with the CATA and athletic therapists in general. But we need to harness those things and really exploit the fact of how marketable we can be, rather than complaining that we're not known.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think there's a lot of good people out there. There's a lot of people that I follow in the performance space that and have connected with through this podcast and others, but there is definitely, and there's plenty of room for the generalist, right? The specialist is you got to find that niche, you got to do that, but the generalist that can fit in any room in any capacity. That, for example, I get a text saying, hey, do you mind leading this component of our strength testing tomorrow? Where I can take that role on as an athletic therapist and with a strength background and those kind of pieces. At the same time, I can call the orthopedic surgeon and give him my findings from an orthopedic evaluation. I can talk to the neuropsychologist about his findings on an impact test. I can work with the GP on whatever, all these different pieces. And I think as students, as young therapists, as therapists that are, looking to do something different, it's just a matter of finding the things that light you up and finding, those channels to get there. And this is a great avenue for it. And I know you're quite open. You and I have connected at a number of conferences, and then again through sort of phone calls and ideas and just spitballing certain things. And finally, again, got you on here at session 99. It only took 98 tries before this one to get to you, but these are big pieces. So what would you advise in terms of, or looking back, maybe even as a student, where you were at and where you are now? What advice would you give yourself to sort of push you to further your understanding of that generalist approach?
Well, that's a hard question, actually.
Yeah, hard and easy at the same time.
I think one thing that we need to do better about, and I wish, going back, is we really do need to believe in ourselves a lot more. I often tell people, just own it. Just, own your profession, own your job. And I wish I did that more back in undergrad, because, I wish I actually, I'll be honest, I wish I sort of stood up more as a leader that I've sort of come to be as well, because there are opportunities I missed out on because I was, shy. I didn't want to, put myself out there, etc. And, I missed out on a lot that way. But the one thing I'll say I did really, really good at is I made sure to introduce myself to absolutely everyone I ever met. And that has benefited me more than anything I've ever learned.
I think that's massive. And it highlights, again, the emphasis of this, like through this channel and this podcast, the opportunity to meet you, for somebody who's never met you. They're meeting your history, your boundaries a little bit, where you're at now, your interests, and it may be lighting something up in them to finally say, wow, I could do that. How do I do that? And now they have access to you through this and through different channels. And I know you're open in that manner beyond this podcast as well, which goes a long, long way. That piece is uniform from a lot of guests that have been on here, is to introduce yourself, make yourself available. But that's not easy either when you're young and you're not quite as confident as you are, now.
Well, and that's the thing we need to really get people to understand is, like CATA conference. Every student I talked to, I got a chance to talk to CTSQ students in Quebec last week. It was fantastic. I met, probably 30 of them. And I asked them, are you coming to the conference? Like, well, no. I'm like, going to the conference is probably the number one best career move you'll ever make. And it's not the education. Has nothing to do with the education. It has everything to do with meeting people, because as soon as you become known to people, like even 20 minutes ago, I got a message from an old classmate asking me for a referral. I referred her to someone I met at a conference. And it's even myself, like, I made sure to, even if they didn't know my name after, to go up, introduce myself. The first prof I met outside of Sheridan was Dr. Richard Dumont. Went up, introduced myself, ended up going to seeing him at a conference a couple of weeks later. Like, it's those types of things that once your name becomes familiar, people will talk to you. And I think conferences are expensive, but other opportunities, covering games, go introduce yourself. And in fact, you should be. And regardless, I'm a huge believer in the medical timeouts before games, but just those relationships are how you will get ahead, and not necessarily from a career standpoint, but just in life in general.
Yeah, and I think that these are the pieces as well that go a long, long way. I've had numerous conversations with therapists. I started my career in the United States, went to a lot of US-based conferences, PBATs and different ones down in the US when I was working there to start. Hadn't gone to a conference before Niagara Falls, and went to that conference. There's just like, man, there is some power in this room. Some people that you read about, some people that you see maybe on social media, probably wasn't as big back then, but social media, and all of a sudden they walk in the room, and all you have to do is put out your hand and introduce yourself and tell them you've read something, or you have a minute to chat, or whatever the case may be. And again, like, the opportunity to connect, the opportunity to understand, to learn from and with one another. I would second that heavily, of getting to conferences. They may be expensive. You may have to go to a different city, but utilize that as an opportunity to get outside of your comfort zone. Money is fleeting, relationships last. So I think, like, if you go and you introduce yourself and you are a student, you can start to see a little bit more of the bigger picture. You can introduce yourself, you can hear cool topics, there's no better continuing education in my books than in-person conferences, which we're getting back to. All things being equal, we're getting back to in May, right? Is that correct? I think the dates off the top of my head. I'm just thinking, I'm looking them up. May. I had them in my head, but I forgot them. Anyway,
it's in May. I know that
this year is in May. It's in Winnipeg. It's the first weekend in May, so I think it's like the 5th or the 7th of May. Anyway, regardless, just look that one up. It's through WFAT this year, in conjunction with the World Federation of Athletic Therapists and Trainers. U.S. Heavy in terms of some of the presenters, Chad Starkey and other people who have been in the past. And Canadian. So I think this is going to be a great opportunity. Myself, I'm looking to find a way to get there. It's mid-season, but what can you do? But these are opportunities to connect with people like you, and people that can potentially change your career path and update you on things that you may not have been aware of before. So a great point, and an opportunity to get to know some colleagues, and definitely meet new people, and for sure understand a broader scope of the generalist principles.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And even if it's not WFAT, even if it's a local provincial conference, anything, even if it's just networking events, those things are, I think, just important. So
yeah, absolutely. Where did this begin for you? I'm going to take this back now, sort of like full circle. Sheridan College was a long time ago. No harm intended with that comment, but where did the interest start at the very beginning?
So I actually had a quite an interesting educational path that I actually, in every one of my first year lectures, I actually share it. I didn't start sharing until I was 25. I had this dream of becoming a physician. Turned out my early 20s, I was a terrible student. Failed out of Trent University. really had sort of a rough patch academically, and I was trying to build up some courses here and there that I knew I'd need as prereqs to sort of rebuild my academic record. Then I actually met a therapist by the name of Graham Wilshire, who was from Kingston, Ontario. His wife at the time was an AT Vicky at Queen's, and I was coaching rugby. I met him. I went, this seems like a cool job. So I actually ended up working with him over the summer, doing my hours to apply to school, applied to Sheridan, somehow got in. It's all the programs are so hyper competitive. I somehow got in, and I had a 5-year track in my 4-year degree. I have no problem telling I made the mistake of not taking anatomy seriously. I teach anatomy now for a living, but I failed my first anatomy course. I got an F. Best lesson I ever learned. So
there you go. Live and learn.
Yeah, it's every failure I've ever had in academia I could tell you about.
100%. And this is how we grow, and this is how we begin to know, right? It's like these areas are gaps. I'm either going to avoid my weaknesses, or I'm going to face them head on. And generally speaking, when we face them head on, better things come from that.
Absolutely. I completely agree.
Yeah. So I mean, what a sort of an upstart. I think we're similar in that manner. I finished my 4-year degree and had big dreams of playing professionally, and then sort of transitioned and went and did athletic therapy at York University, one of the other institutions that offers this in Canada, and as a mature student, so a little bit older. I wasn't doing it in conjunction with my undergrad, but actually afterwards, and led to a lot of great things. And I probably failed anatomy too, but somehow got through. And now anatomy is critically important when talking and speaking and living it. Again, the application piece, not the memorization piece, not the stuff that matters on a 2-dimensional piece of paper, but in memorization, but it matters in action. How do we put this into application? Coming back full circle to what you're doing with your research, and all of that.
One thing I'll just add to that is I was absolutely lucky enough that part of Ohio's program was to do a cadaver dissection, and seeing that in in 3D, seeing the real life, how nature built our body was absolutely fascinating, because that I liked how you said that, sort of that 2-dimensional paper, because anatomy is so much more complex than we give it credit for in any textbook.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think let's go down that road, because when you apply it and you say bicep starts here and then goes to here and does this action of bending my upper arm and my lower arm into flexion at the elbow, and a little bit of whatever else it does, that's my anatomy skills there. But the idea being that this approach of linear thinking and linear management of anatomy, when you have the opportunity to do a cadaver lab and you see that actually we can't even tell brachialis from biceps brachii when we get down below the level of the skin. Those identifiers were put into textbooks so that we could give them a name and we could give them a function in that 2-dimensional space. But in reality, it's pretty tough to isolate. That's the injury, that's the muscle, that's its even its origin and insertion differ from human to human based on anatomical setup.
Absolutely.
So we learn it in sort of this, I made this post, and I want to go back to this because the post that I just made on, I don't know, Instagram or something today was like, having this checklist, having simplicity at the basis of what we do allows us to scaffold outward. And so that simplicity of understanding 2-dimensional anatomy, origin, insertion, function, and nerve innervation that we memorize and have ingrained into us becomes sort of that basic foundation. And then as we go, if we move into that space of training, therapy, whatever the case may be, we begin to understand that there is a whole lot more fluidity to what the biceps doesn't do, eccentric loading, concentric loading, to antagonist, synergist, all these other terms where it's much more than just the memorization. So those pieces are great. We start simple and we go outward, which again, you highlighted in your career. You spend time on the board, you spend time on sidelines, you spend time in clinics, you spend time in academia. Like, you are the proverbial all of what an athletic therapist is. You've done all the things. So mentors along the way. I know you mentioned Chad Starkey and you mentioned Andrew there at Western. Anybody in the AT world specifically that you want to publicly thank as a mentor? I know you'll be leaving lots out, and that's a caveat as well. But yeah.
Well, there's really 4 names that come to mind. Surinder Budwal was my equipment teacher at Sheridan. He's now become, a very close friend. He's taught me everything I need to know. Well, not everything I need to know. I'm just barely learning everything I'm going to need to know about the business side of our field businesses. Dr. Lorianne Hines has been probably one of the most impactful mentors in my, I was lucky enough to have her at Sheridan. I was also lucky enough to recruit her for the board a couple of years ago when we had to fill a vacancy. I don't think I have to really say much more about her because I'm pretty sure she's touched most of the people. Kirsty McKenzie is another prof of mine that I actually, come to know her as a friend now. And funny enough, one of the things Kirsty does with her graduating students is she gives them a receipt book as a symbol of your future earnings. And she writes something in it. And I actually came across mine. And like I said, I never saw myself as a leader ever. Her entire thing was about leadership. I sent it to her. I was blown away because I'm like, I never saw this. And she's like, I did. But I think the biggest person that I'd say the impact on my life is Amanda Halls. And if you've never met Amanda Halls, if you ever get the opportunity to, I really encourage you to. She's the one that I still remember sitting in. She was our clinic director at the time. And it basically came down to whatever you do, just be the best badass you can be. And she was hard on us. She set a standard and she did not let you waver from that standard. At the time, I say like people fear having these standards set, but she set that standard because she wanted us to be the best we can be, not be, just getting by, not being that 50 student. It was, if you're going to do this, be the best badass you can be. And I lucky enough to still take counsel with Amanda. A couple times a year, I'll call her out of the blue with some problem I have. And, 2 hours later, I'm feeling better about whatever it is. And she's explained, through her philosophy and wisdom of how I can overcome or give me advice, et cetera, and all those. So.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing. And I know there's a lot of people along the way as well that you've left out. But 3 out of those 4, we're on session 99, and 3 out of those 4 have not been on this podcast yet. So Surinder, this is a call out. Kirsty and Amanda, you're up. We're going to go through Mike here. Mike, I'm going to use you as a conduit to get them on here. We'd love to hear their stories as well. And if you're listening, reach out, and I'd love to schedule that with you guys as well, because all have come recommended. It's just a matter of scheduling and timing and all of these pieces. So really appreciate you sharing that. And I do hope to have each and every one of them on here as well into the future. And the next piece of that is these mentors that we pick up along the way that see things in us as students, that see things in us as athletic therapists with potential or potential to be whatever it is. Sometimes it takes more than a mirror to figure out what we need. We need somebody on that other side, somebody in our corner, somebody to push us a little bit, somebody to see the things that we don't see in ourselves, because we wake up every day and just kind of go through motions through a good portion of our life, and we don't necessarily capture the importance of that first anatomy exam until we fail it, right? And those kinds of things along the way. But the next part to that is those mentors become colleagues as you enter the professional world. And I see that now from a teaching standpoint, from being at York University, from spending some time at Sheridan as well, in more recent years, that now I have who were once students are now colleagues. And I think that is incredibly insightful on my end. And you then begin to learn the importance of what those relationships are over and over again on a different level, where that mentorship or that tough love that was shown early on by that mentor turned into something in your life, whether it showed you, I don't want to be that, or I do want to be that, or that was a lesson I needed, or I'm going to call back on that at some point in my career. I think those are all pieces that you've touched on and you've shared through sharing your story here this evening. And that's a big one. Yeah.
I think we don't even realize some of the lessons that these mentors tell us till years down the road. Like it was my first anatomy exam. I failed. And I still remember having the conversation with Paul Brisebois. And he's like, listen, I'm doing you a favor. And about 5 years later, I realized he did me the biggest favor in the world, because I had an opportunity to go back study more, become better in anatomy. And we both know if you have a good functional understanding of anatomy, special tests don't matter. You can just make up your own, because you can start isolating and or attempting to pseudo isolate and recreate those things just based on creativity, on your knowledge.
Absolutely, man. And I think that's it, right? And again, you can start to deviate with years of experience and with good mentors and colleagues who laid that foundational piece early that you can scaffold off of as you get out. It's not to take shortcuts, but it's to find ways that work for you, the therapist, in the situation that you're in. Applicative knowledge, right? Like sometimes I'm not going to be able to do a full shoulder exam, but if I know Hawkins Kennedy and I need that right away, I can get to it, right? And I have that in my arsenal, and I know where and when to apply that, and what that may tell me. Does that mean they have impingement? Not necessarily. Does it give me an idea as to what structures may be involved? Sure. And then you start to peel back the layers of the onion that way. So all amazing shares, Mike. Really appreciate that. And we're getting on. It's a little later on the East Coast, so I don't want to keep you too late. I know you've had long weeks and long hours in your days. Where does it go from here? Where's our profession? I don't want to get into any of the politics of it. That's not my space. It's not my place. But where do you see our profession going? Do you see us moving into this generous role? Do you see us being a little bit more marketable? Do you see value in having these conversations in potentially the conference, which is May 5th to May 7th in Winnipeg this year? Just to touch back on that one. Where do you see us going here?
No, I think we're on a good track. We have good leadership. We just had a great election, and frankly, seeing 1,500 of our members come out to these meetings. Yeah, these meetings are boring, etc. But our future is bright. But the one thing in that space that I'd like to highlight is, if you're a newly certified grad, you bring a lot to volunteerism. It doesn't matter how long. If you were being certified for a day and you have the want or interest in volunteering, running for boards, running for your professional associations, do it. Because every single one of us, once you graduate with that 4-year degree, you've graduated with the hardest degree you can get, bachelor's degree. You bring a lot to the table, you bring your experiences, and our future is within our youth of our profession. And it's the one thing that, I want to see continue to grow. I don't want to be the youngest president of CATA. I hope someone else younger than me takes over. And I'd like to just, not big spotlight guy. So I'd like to, do what I did and move into the sunset.
That's it. The best therapists are the ones that aren't seen, but the impact is felt. And I think there's a lot of push here. There's a lot of good energy that can be harnessed in our profession. And I think if we focus on those things and we listen to one another and we hear each other's stories, we can really tap into that power, tap into that potential, and find more avenues, more channels to enter, more good conversations to have, more mentor colleague relationships. And nobody is unapproachable that I have come across in this profession.
I completely agree.
Yeah, we're all in it. We're in service to others, and to be quite honest, it's nice to hear about other people, and other people like to be heard about. So we should continue to share stories. That's the impetus of this podcast, just not only in the athletic therapy space, but in this performance space, in the human performance space. We have a lot of great future guests lined up. 100 is our next session. It is not officially scheduled yet. I had big plans for that one. We'll see what comes of that. But tonight, Mike Robinson, current Vice President of the CATA, and so many other things. Mike, I'll let you wrap this up by saying goodnight. Just let me throw the sponsors in here one more time. Yeah, as always, Let's Chat brought to you by First Star Therapy, Mobility Tape, Epic, Benchmark Athletics, and in association with this great association that is all of ours, the Canadian Athletic Therapists Association. Thank you again for the live audience. Thank you, Mike, for being here, for your time. Thank you to everybody out there who's sharing in this and pushing this thing along. And by this thing, I don't mean this podcast. This is not mine. This is ours. This is meant to connect people, this profession and beyond. So thank you all for listening. Mike, I'll throw it to you for last words.
Well, I want to say thanks to you, James, for having me on and having these conversations. And the one thing I'll say is, don't be afraid to talk to anybody in our profession. We all have fanny packs. We all do the same job, and we're all really looking forward to talking to each other. And I think our future is bright. And thank you very much for everyone listening in.
That's a wrap. Thanks again, guys. Good night. This is session 99. Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast. Thanks again for being here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being a part of this community. Check us out online, firststartherapy.com. That's FIRSTAR therapy.com. Or email us with feedback, consult@firststartherapy.com. CONSULT@firststartherapy.com. On Instagram @firststar.therapy, and our podcast host @letschat.at. This is First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast.